Hello and welcome to Beads Jar. My name's Billie and today I'd like to show you how to create this beautiful Cappuccino sparkle bracelet. It uses our 5-hole multi-strand clasp. Right, let's start on our Cappuccino sparkle bracelet, which is using a fantastic mixture of these wonderful beads I have in front of me. So we're going to use the Preciosas, the Baroque pearls, these Miyuki cubes, the Liberty ribbon, and 4mm Swarovski crystals. Components wise, I need some leather ends, 5mm jump rings, crimp beads, this 5 multi-strand clasp which also slides to open, so it's really nice to use, and we've got our beadalon. I'll also require some scissors, my side cutters, and 2 pairs of flat nose pliers. So the first thing I'm going to start with, I'm going to take my clasp and I'm going to use my flat nose pliers and I'm going to open my first jump ring. So to do this, I'm going to hold one side firmly with my flat nose pliers, and then I'm also going to use a second pair of flat nose pliers and I'm going to open my jump ring. How I do this is to pull one side towards me to open it. So I'm just moving my right hand, and that way when I close it back together we have a lovely neat seal with no gaps. So you just want to pull one side towards you to open it, and I'm going to connect that onto one side and the top link. And then we're going to close that back together again. If you wish to do the jump rings now, you can. And then the next step, I've just pre-cut 4 lengths of the cable wire. So I'm just going to undo these and I'm going to take one of the strands. So this is just a nice nylon coated wire. And I'm going to pop onto the wire a crimp bead. So this is a small metal bead that you can crush using your pliers. So don't work right at the tip of the wire. Let that fall down quite a way. I've given myself a generous length here, so we've got plenty to work with, about 20 centimeters. And then go back to the jump ring we just attached and through the jump ring with the wire. And then you're going to take that tail end back up and through the crimp bead. So now we've got the 2 wires here, and I'm going to hold those with my fingers and I'm going to pull that crimp bead as close to the jump ring as I can get it. And then with the flat nose pliers I'm going to crush the crimp bead flat. So the flat nose pliers are just going to go either side of the crimp bead and we're just going to crush that firmly into place. Once these crimp beads are crushed, they don't move on the wire. That's obviously what attaches it. So my first strand, I want to use these beautiful Baroque pearls. So we're literally just going to string those straight onto this wire. And when they fall down the wire, when you've got this tail end bit, that's going to tuck neatly inside them. And the other reason for doing that rather than cutting it away is you don't get the scratchy end sticking out and irritating the skin when the jewellery item's worn. Okay, so I'm literally going to just thread all these Baroques on here. Okay. So that's all my pearls strung on, and instead of actually attaching this side for now, I'm going to pop another crimp bead on, and this really doesn't matter whether you place it high up or low down. I'm just going to crush it because I just want the beads to not be able to come off this strand. I'm going to first put all the other strands on and then get to show you how to finish the ends on these. So we're going to do the very same steps again. So opening the jump ring, and then hooking that onto the second loop on the multi-strand fastener, and then we close that together. And our next strand of cable wire, the crimp bead goes on, and we don't have to work right at the tip, we can work lower down, and you go through the jump ring. Then take the tail end back, and we're going to drop the the crimp bead down over both and as close to that jump ring as we can get it. And then we want to crush that crimp bead flat with the pliers. So that's on really nice and securely now. And then the next lovely strand is the preciosas. Again, when these drop down, we're going to tuck that tail end of wire. So there's two bits here. I'm going to tuck that inside. Also, when these sit together, you'll notice they swap and turn, so it gives a really beautiful effect when they're strung up together. So again, I'm going to string all these preciosas onto the wire. Once again, I'm just going to crimp one crimp bead on the end so that the beads don't fall off whilst I put the next strands on. Now the next one's a little different because we're actually going to pop our Liberty ribbon on. So I've cut my length, and when you decide on the length, remember you're going to add the leather end in there as well, so it's going to be a bit longer. So you just want a fraction shorter than the beaded lengths on there. So for this, we're going to use the leather ends, which look like that. And you need to find where the stitching of the Liberty ribbon is running. So it's on this side. So I want to put the smooth side of the ribbon facing down, so that when we fold the leather ends over, that'll give us a nice smooth run for our bracelet. So in order to work with the leather end, I'm going to hold that on my finger. You can trim away any excess ends if they're just sneaking out there, and you want to place that into the leather end. You can use a blob of glue if that makes you feel like it will secure it a bit better. So now the ribbon's sat inside the end, and we're just going to use the flat nose pliers, and you want to take one side of the ribbon end over, so we're just folding that over, and then I'm just going to turn that to make it easier for me to get the other side, and then we're going to fold this side on top, and that makes it really, really nice and secure. And then we have our smooth end here. So the same on the other side. So that's the side with the stitching and the smooth side, so I want that facing down into the leather end. And then we're going to fold the sides over. So fold one first, and then rather than tie yourself in knots, just spin that round and fold the other one. So that gives me the two leather ends on there, nice and firm and secure. That's going to be my third strand on the bracelet. So we go back to our jump ring and we're going to open that as we've done before. Hook it onto the leather end and onto the third link on the multi-strand clasp, and then we close that back together again. Like so. And then we're on to our final two strands. So next jump ring goes on. So we open that up, hook that onto the fourth loop, and we close that back together again. And then we take our third wire and we're going to go through the crimp bead, through the jump ring, and then back up through the crimp bead for the second time. And then drop that down. As close to that jump ring as you can get it. You then want to crush the crimp bead firmly with your flat nose pliers, and we're going to string our Miyuki cubes. So that's the Miyuki strand done, and we just pop our crimp bead onto the end of the wire here, and crush that just to stop them falling off. And we're on to the very last strand. So jump ring open, hook onto the clasp, close it back together again, make sure there's no gap. Last strand of wire, crimp bead goes onto the wire, through the jump ring, back through the crimp bead, and then the crimp bead is going to go on both the strands and then down to the jump ring to be crushed. And the last strand we're doing is our lovely 4mm Swarovskis. So we're going to string all these ones on. As I mentioned at the beginning, if you're needing to find out about sizes and lengths and therefore how many beads you'll need, just visit the how-to page and find this project on our website. So we're coming up now to the final bit of attaching all these strands, and that will finish off this amazing bracelet. I'm just tucking those crystals, the tail end into the crystals. Okay. And I'm just going to crimp that on there. Right, so that's all our strands together. Now we just want to secure them parallel on this side of the fastener. So I'm just going to remove the clasp, so that's all still attached there, and then we've got the 5 loops for this side. Okay, so we're doing basically very similar to how we started. So we're going to take our jump ring, open that and attach it to the first loop on the clasp, and then you want to close that back together again. Once that's firmly closed, you're going to take the Baroque strand, just check that tail end is hiding inside the Baroque pearls, because we don't want it sticking out and being sharp on the skin. And then you're going to gently open the crimp bead that we put on, so just squeeze it softly the other way and take that off the wire. The next crimp bead goes onto the same strand, and we're going to drop it all the way down to the Baroque pearls, so it's sat right next to those. This end of the wire is now going to come up and through the jump ring that we've just placed on the fastener. The end of the thread is going to come back, so there's the fastener still on this strand, and this is going to come down through the crimp bead and through the Baroque pearls. You'll notice I've got the tail end of the wire coming out to the side after about the first 6 Baroques, and I'm just going to bring in that loop of wire because we don't want a big loop of wire here. In order to do that, I'm just going to use my pliers to support above the crimp bead. So we're just bringing this loop down, so work that right down as far as we can, so that the loop of wire is as small as we can get it and as close to the jump ring, so the crimp bead's as close to the jump ring, sorry. Now before I crush the crimp bead, what I would recommend you do is to take this excess wire off first. Also, just have a double check before you cut anything away that that tail end on the opposite side isn't hidden. We don't want that sticking out. So use your side cutters and get as close as you can and take away that excess wire. You'll notice now we've got a smooth string of beads and no wires sticking out anywhere. Then you can crush the crimp bead with your flat nose pliers. So you just want to crush that flat, and that secures our first strand. So we're going to do the second strand. Exactly the same method for this one. So the jump ring goes on. And then we close our jump ring. Little bit of a gap there, I'll just tighten that up a bit more. And again, we're going to attach our second strand of wire here. Crimp bead on, let that fall down to the beads. I'm just going to check this end, make sure nothing's escaped and sticking out, and then through the jump ring that we've just placed on there. Same again, I'm going to take the tail end back and through the crimp bead, and if you can, the first 3 or 4 preciosas. I'm just guiding that loop down so we don't have this big loop of wire next to the fastener. And we really pull that in. Last check to make sure that tail end hasn't escaped, and I'm going to take that wire away. So use my side cutters. I'm going to get really nice and close. Remove that excess. Don't forget to go back and crimp your crimp bead though, otherwise it'll fall apart. So now see, it's really starting to build up with our layers. Now the ribbon is a little different, and you also want to make sure there's no twists as you're attaching this one, so you don't want it like moving around. You want this nice and flat, so just support that end and run your finger down across it. Take your jump ring, open that up. I would go through the leather end first. As that's nice and flat. And then I'm actually going to take that through the third ring on the clasp, and then close that back together. And it should, yes, sit nice and flat there. And then we're doing our last two, the same way we've done the other two strands. Oops, forgot to attach my jump ring first. So let's just pop that one on. In fact, I'm just going to attach both jump rings now. So both jump rings are going to go on as we're just finishing these strands on this side. And this is going on the last loop. It won't get in your way or anything by doing this, so that's fine to pop it on. Keep it like that so you can see what I'm doing. So the crimp bead I've already threaded, it's just sat at the bottom, and then I'm going to go through that fourth jump ring. Tail end's going to go back through the crimp and the first 3 or 4 Miyuki cubes, and then we're just going to pull that in. Really make sure that's secure before we take our wire away. And then we're crushing that last crimp there. And onto the final strand. They're a bit finer, so just make sure that end's hidden well. Okay. Crimp bead goes on through the jump ring, so this is the last one. And then back through. Trim away that excess wire. And then we're going to crush the crimp bead. So let's just remove all these bits and then I can show you. So you've got all your strands, and then when it's worn, this fastener will just slip beautifully into there and give you that very nice multi-strand cappuccino sparkle bracelet. How fabulous! Thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you for our next tutorial. If you've enjoyed it, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. See you again next time. Goodbye!